Okay, so welcome. Today is the second week of the virtual network lab sheet. So I will go through it again and go into a little bit more detail with regards to the processes that you need to follow in order to get everything working correctly. I will go through some common mistakes that students tend to do that end up getting the network wrong basically. And so that we make sure that I would like you ideally by the end of this week, if not, if you're really struggling by the end of next week, which is consolidation week, to have finished your virtual network completely and have all of your virtual machines working and talking to their neighbors. Okay. First of all, I would like to do a little kind of progress check. So I would like you to give me a hands up if you have one virtual machine working inside Prometheus. Okay. What if you have 3 virtual machines working inside Prometheus? Okay. Virtual machines inside Prometheus and the VM subnet script running correctly. Yeah, that's good. Okay, virtual machines inside Prometheus pinging their neighbors, which means done with the lab sheet. Okay, that's fine. So yes, so this is where I would expect us to be, so that's good. So I will go through it again. I will explain it again on the whiteboard, draw everything, because last week's video was mirrored. So it's, you need a mirror to see everything on the whiteboard. It's not a good idea. So I will draw a diagram again, and I will explain the networking aspect of things again while we're at it. So as I said, in order to create this network, the first mistake that I see people do is they try to create vPrometheus 0, 1, and 2 on their computer, on their physical host next to Prometheus. This is wrong. Okay, so the 3 virtual machines should be built inside the Prometheus virtual machine. Okay, it's like a Russian doll sort of thing. So you have one inside the other. All right. So you need to think of it in layers, in levels. So level 0 is your host, your physical computer. Okay. You then have level 1 of our visualization that we're implementing, and that is your Prometheus virtual machine. Remember, you shouldn't be doing anything outside the Prometheus virtual machine. Copy the old DVD disk image perhaps, but that's it. Okay, so level 1 is where you're always working, where you're supposed to be doing everything that you need to be doing. So if Prometheus is our level 1, then our vPrometheus 0, 1, and 2 are level 2 of our virtualization infrastructure. Okay, they're not one inside the other, again, because I did see somebody trying to do this. That was fun. They are all on the same level. So those 3 virtual machines live inside Prometheus, and they're supposed to be built next to each other. Okay. Now, you also need to remember that when you're building a virtual machine somewhere, practically it is a bunch of files on the host operating system. All right. So your Prometheus virtual machine will have its files, its folder called Prometheus, and all of the files that make up the contents of that folder inside your physical actual host. All right. So the operating system of the virtual machine that you're building might be running on level 1, but the files that it depends on are running on level 0. All right. In a similar fashion, vPrometheus 0, 1, and 2 run on level 2, so they are virtualized inside our virtualized virtual machine. However, their files are physically located on Prometheus itself. Now, for this lab sheet, you need to do lots of different configuration, both inside and outside of the virtual machine. Configuration that you will need to do outside of the 3 virtual machines that you're building. So this means that it's configuration that you need to do on Prometheus itself, is running the 2 customized scripts that we have provided to you. So VM subnet and fix VMnet need to be executed in a terminal inside Prometheus, not vPrometheus 0, 1, or 2. All right, and definitely not on the host. They won't run anyway. Okay, so the fix VMnet dev script is the script that will change the settings of your 3 virtual machines, 0, 1, and 2, and it will give your virtual machines 3 customized network cards. They need to run inside Prometheus, inside /root, /vmware, /vprometheus 0, 1, and 2 folders. Okay, so the scripts need to run in the same folder, they need to reside, they need to live in the same folder as all of the files of the virtual machines that you want to make changes to. So all this is happening on Prometheus. All right. And the files that you will need to change, the file that the fix script changes basically is the vprometheus0.vmx file. The .vmx file in VMware Virtual Machines is the file that contains all of the configuration settings, all of the hardware settings if you like, and all of the virtual machine related settings for the virtual machine that you're building and you're running. You will see other files in there as well. For example, you will see VMDK files. They are the biggest files and they are the hard drive space files on the system. One thing you might notice is you might give your vPrometheus 012 a hard drive space of 20 gigabytes. This doesn't mean that each of them will take up 20 gigabytes on your space on Prometheus. Okay, they usually start with about 6 or 7 gigabytes of space. This is because the virtual machines only use the space that they need. This is a principle in virtualization and in cloud computing that works everywhere. Okay, if you're building something and it's virtualized, it will not expand to its maximum available resources immediately, unless you explicitly tell it to, yeah? So that you save on resources on your host. So this means that your 3 virtual machines on Prometheus shouldn't really take more than 20 gigabytes together, or they should be around that area. All right. It doesn't matter if you start using them, copying files in them and everything, they will expand up to 20 gigabytes each. You should have 200 gigabytes of space on Prometheus in general, so you should be fine, unless you've done the partitioning wrong in the first lab sheet, in which case you'll have to rebuild. Okay, so those files of 0, 1, and 2 should be inside your root VMware vPrometheus root VMware vPrometheus 0, 1, 2 folders. The fix script should be in there. In order to run it, you need to change its permissions first because you downloaded it from a website essentially, and you're trying to run it as root. So you need its mod 777 file name command in order to change its permissions and run it. Another thing that people do wrong a lot is they run the fix script with the virtual machines either running or suspended. The virtual machines need to be powered off from the operating system inside completely. Okay, this is because when you make changes to the virtual machine, the operating system must not be in some sort of running state when you do that. You can't have a physical computer on, open it up and start adding network cards. In the same way, you cannot do this with VMware. And another reason why you cannot do this with VMware is when a virtual machine is running, it creates sort of temporary snapshot files of its configuration and everything else. So then you're not really changing the file that is being used when you run the script. So you run the script, you start up your virtual machine again, and nothing has changed. This is because the virtual machine was suspended. Okay, you tend to just click on the X symbol on the VMware window. That will suspend. It will not power off. Okay, you need to go inside the operating system, go to the power button, and then power off the virtual machine. Then run the script. And then once you do that, you must not start the virtual machine again. You must go into its settings in VMware and change the network cards in there. So you will have 3 custom network cards, all connecting to VMnet 0. You need to connect them according to whatever they actually connect to, which, according to our diagram, is VMnet 0 on 0, VMnet 1 and 2 for the 2 network cards on virtual machine 1, and then VMnet 2 for virtual machine number 2. However, in order to be able to do this, and in order to be able to get the option to use VMnet 0, 1 and 2 correctly, you have to have run the VM_subnet script beforehand. Okay. Now the VM subnet script is something that needs to be run every time you restart your Prometheus VM. So now we're getting to a point where the configurations that you need to make to your system are getting a bit more complicated. Okay, so you have 2 choices. Either get everything to start automatically every time you start your computer. An easy utility way to do this, in /etc there is a file called rc.local. If you call something in there, it will happen at start time. And there is something else that students do wrong with this. I won't say you specifically, people specifically don't read instructions. So in rc.local, as soon as you open it, there is a little paragraph on the top that explains a few things. In order for rc.local to run, you need to change its permissions and let it be run by the users. All right. So if you do decide to go that way, if you do decide to automate the system with rc.local, please read the paragraph in the beginning of the file and type the command that it says. The command is there. It says you need to type this command in order for the thing to work. Okay. So if you type this command, rc.local will run at start time and it will execute your VM subnet. You can tell it to do IP tables minus capital F if you like. You can tell it to do all sorts of things. All right. It's the equivalent to the Windows startup registry setting. Okay. So with rc.local, with items in rc.local in place, you don't need to worry about restarting your computer and having to rerun everything. The other solution to this is never power off your Prometheus. When you leave the lab, just suspend it. Click on the X on the window of VMware. That will put the virtual machine in suspend, and that is also useful when later on you start running services like routing, like DNS and so on, or in the end when you reach the kickstart point when you have to set up your own DHCP server and everything else. If you suspend your virtual machine, it's like you never shut it down, so the services will keep running forever. Okay. Of course, this is the easy way out. I do want all of your services to be running automatically at startup when you start your virtual machine. Okay, if you're building a server in a company somewhere, you can't rely on the fact that this server will never go down. They shouldn't, but you never know. You might need to do an update of some sort and need to reboot. What happens then? Your services will need to be restarted. They might need to be restarted in a specific order. You might have to have a cheat sheet next to the server that says, in order for everything to run, you need to run this, then this, then this, then this, and this, and so on. Okay. If you automate this process as much as possible, then even if your server does go down and it comes back up on its own, it means that you don't have to connect to it remotely and work on it and configure everything, or even worse, get up in the middle of the night and go to the actual place and fix everything. Okay, so automation is key in everything that you do on any computer, really. All right, so with VM subnet, starting automatically every time you start your computer, you should be able to have your VMnet 0 and VMnet 1 network cards configured on your host. Okay, so VMnet 0 and VMnet 1 are started up as processes on the system, and are also started up and configured as running network cards on your system. So when you type ifconfig, after you run VM subnet, you should be able to see your ENO1 network card or your ENS33 network card, whatever it's called on Prometheus, your loopback network card, a VIRPR, because we have virtualization capabilities in our Prometheus VM, and then you should be able to see VMnet 0 on subnet 30 and VMnet 1 on subnet 31. Okay. This is what your ifconfig should look like. If it looks like anything else, if you have 0 and 1, but they have different addresses, then they're wrong. If you have a VMnet 2 showing up in ifconfig, that's wrong as well. VMnet 2 and in fact VMnet 3 as well are configured to start up as running processes in the system with the script, but not configured to take an IP address and all the other networking information from the script. So all we're using them for is we're starting them up as processes so that your virtual machines can connect to them, sort of like connecting to a switch, and communicate with each other. This is exactly the case of the VMnet 2 network connection between virtual machines 1 and 2. Okay, and then VMnet 3, you will need it if you reach to the last part of the routing lab sheet or NATing or whatever additional task I have that connects back here. Okay, so make sure that your VM subnet runs and runs correctly. An additional thing that you can do that you won't really need it so much in this one, but you will need it in the or it's rather good to have it in the next lab sheet, is to make sure that you take care of all of your VMnet interfaces. So VMware itself will start a bridge on VMnet 0, it will start a host-only VMnet 1, it will start a NATed VMnet 8 network card, and so on. When you run the VM subnet script, VMnets 1 and 8 get deleted, they get removed from the system, However, the bridge on VMnet 0 does not. So if you take a listing of the running processes on the system, so if you do ps-ef pipe grep vmnet to look at all of the vmnet processes that are running on the system, you will see a vmnet 0 bridge running. It would be a good idea to kill that process on the system so that you don't actually have a bridge running. It won't affect you so much now. On this particular lab sheet, it will affect you in the sense that you will be able to ping from virtual machine 0 to virtual machine 1, but for the wrong reasons, because the bridge is there. Okay, you shouldn't be able to ping from 0 to 1 and vice versa. You should only be able to ping your neighboring computers. And then, of course, it will be a problem later on in routing because you don't know if your routing is actually working or if you can ping because of the bridge that's there. So the bridge is something that I personally always take down. It's one of the startup tasks. So you can kill all the tasks essentially, and you can do this in Arch.local as well, and make sure that the bridge doesn't come up every time when you run the system. Okay, so I will do the diagram once again and explain how we do this. So we have your nice. Let's see. So this box is your Prometheus VM. Okay, now this connects to the outside world with ENS33. Alright, so this is 28 dot something. For me it's 50. For you it will be whatever it is. And this by now, hopefully you should know, should be whatever IP address you have on your host plus 50. Alright, mine is special because... So, you also will need to have two more network cards here. VMnet 0 and VMnet 1. So your Prometheus as a box, as a computer, should have 3 network cards. One physical and 2 virtual network cards. Alright. Now, VMnet 0 should be on 30 dot something. For me it's going to be 253. And VMnet 1 will be on 31 dot something, which for me specifically it's 253. Alright. Now, in here you will have your virtual machines. So you will have your virtual machine 0 here, virtual machine 1, and virtual machine 2. Okay, so they connect to each other like this. Alright, so this gets us to VMnet 0 on subnet 30. So that will have a network card here, which inside the virtual machine will be called DNS33. But outside the virtual machine, on the settings of the virtual machine, this will be connecting to VMnet 0. And again, it will be on subnet 30. So this will be 30 dot something. For me, that something is 254. Okay. In a similar way, this virtual machine 1 will have 2 network cards, ENS33 and what is usually called ENS35 on the other side. Okay, so ENS33 will be on 31 dot something. For me, that's 254. And this guy will be on 32 dot something, which for me is going to be 253, so my first usable IP address. And as far as the settings of the virtual machine are concerned, this guy connects to VMnet 1, and this guy connects to VMnet 2. Alright, so outside the box, inside the box. And then finally we have our last virtual machine, ENS33 again, and this will be on 32.254 for me, connecting onto VMnet 2. Okay, so this is the infrastructure that we have inside our Prometheus virtual machine and how everything actually runs with regards to the IP addresses and the network cards that they need to use and what network interfaces in VMware these actually have to connect to in order to work. Okay, now the IP addresses come from the A2.NET subnets file. So I'm working with 253 and 254, and my network address is 252 and my broadcast address is 255. This is because I am working on the very last line of this file. Okay, so 253, 254 that I've used, 252 is my network address, and 255 is my broadcast address. You are all working on whichever line corresponds to the name of the computer that you're working on, and these are the IP addresses that you must use inside your virtual network cards inside your Prometheus. Okay, always the same range of IP addresses, different subnets. So if you're working on Ascari, you'll use 30.9, 30.10, 31.9, 31.10, 32.9, 32.10. Okay. So once you build your virtual machines, you run your fixed VMnet dev, you run your VM subnet, you are then ready to, you have the infrastructure in level 1, so you have everything down on Prometheus. You need to go in level 2, so you need to go inside vPrometheus 0, 1, and 2. And other than, of course, renaming the computers by editing the etc. hostname file and rebooting, you also need to sort out the network cards. So you need to go to the network card settings on the top right corner of your operating system, find your network cards. You should only have one network card for 0 and 2, and you should have two network cards for virtual machine 1. Go in there and set up these IP addresses as we have them here. So you will set up network 30 on virtual machine 1, network 32 on virtual machine 2, and networks 31 and 32 on virtual machine 1. The IP address inside there will be whatever it is on your network diagram, so please remember to make a network diagram before you go to the lab. Okay, and the subnet mask in here will always be 252 because we have subnetted our network and we've changed the way that we use our network. Okay, we changed the size of the subnet that we've allocated to each of you. And the last trick is the default gateway that you need to use, which, if you remember, I said the default gateway should be the next IP address you see on your network diagram on the way towards the internet. So if you're configuring this guy, then the gateway is this. For this guy, the gateway is this. For this guy, the gateway is this, and so on. Okay, this is the easiest and most direct way to get to the next computer next to you, essentially. All right. So once you configure the gateway, the subnet mask, the IP address, and the DNS server, so the DNS should always be 28.251, then you should have the ability to ping your neighbors. You should be able to ping from 0 to 1, sorry, from 0 to Prometheus, from Prometheus to 1, and from 1 to 2, and vice versa. All right. You shouldn't, for a completely correct configuration, be able to ping from 0 to 1 and vice versa. However, you might if you haven't killed the bridge. Okay, so if you kill the VMnet 0 bridge, and you can do it as a test, you can ping between them without doing anything, and you'll see that it will work. You can then kill the bridge process for VMnet 0 and see that it will actually stop pinging, which is the correct behavior for a network of this kind. Okay, so by that point, you will have finished with the lab set, and you can basically move on to the next lab set, which is basically routing. And I will explain it once we come back from the break. So, this week in the lab, I want you to try your best to configure the network, get everything to work. Remember, it's equally important to getting the network built to actually take screenshots of everything that you're doing and explain in the logbook what's happening. Okay, because this lab sheet is generally worth a lot of marks. It's worth more marks than the installation of the operating system for sure. Okay, so it's very important because there are lots of tasks to do in this lab sheet that you explain everything on your screenshots as well. Okay, Don't panic, don't stress if you don't manage to get it out of the way this week. We do have next week, which is the consolidation week, and it's exactly there so that you can catch up with everything that we've done. It's a week that we mostly use so that because by now you've been here for 3-4 weeks, so you should roughly know how everything works with all of your modules. Okay, so it's a week that's an ideal time for you to organize yourselves and say, okay, I have this module, it's assessed on these things. This deadline, the first deadline, the deadline for the coursework is at that date. The deadline for the exam is, whenever the exam period will be. In order to get a pass or good marks in this module, I need to complete these tasks. And that's it. So it's a week that you can use. Please don't take it as a holiday. I will. It's different. To use it to organize everything you need to do about your studies so that the 7 weeks that follow afterwards, they will be quite intense. Okay, you will have lots of work to do. Make sure that you're prepared and you're ready to get on and do everything and get good marks on the modules. Okay. Any questions about all this? All right, I'm hoping I've explained it pretty well now, and I will upload this immediately as soon as I go back so that you can see it, and hopefully everything is correct way around this time. And thank you very much.